At Pattern Union, the Maker's Manifesto is fit, form and function without compromising style. And that's because I want everyone who makes my patterns to be able to achieve a good fit. My instructions come with detailed illustrations. I often have video sew-alongs and of course lots of tips and tricks from my industry background to help you on your sewing journey. Hi, I'm Sarah Pondavie and this is Sue. Sue came to me several years ago wanting to learn how to adjust patterns to fit her figure.
Really it was one pattern. It was a vintage pattern that was a size 30, I think, bust, 30 inches. And I thought that Sarah would just be able to grade it out for me and away I'd go. And she told me I had to make a block of my body shape and then we retrofit the style lines of the patterns onto that block. You can't know how grumpy I was. I wanted her to take this pattern, grade it out, make it fit me by some sort of magic osmosis, and I could go home and sew it. So here I am, 6 years later, and she's still making me fit things to my body block, and it's fabulous.
And so if you're in a position like Sue where you can come and learn things, that's fantastic. But for a lot of home sewers, that's just not possible. And when they're starting out, they really need to have patterns that are going to fit them well. So Sue and I are exactly the same height.
I'm taller.
She's not. But we have very different body shapes. So my body shape is what I call the low triangle. So I have a small waist, big hips, long body and short legs.
What do I have? I have a really short body. Let me stand next to Sarah and you'll see where my waist is compared with hers. I have much bigger bust. I have much smaller hips, no bottom at all.
I have a lot of bottom.
I have none. And I have much longer legs. My hips are up here and Sarah's standing. Drop that leg. She's trying to make herself taller than me. Here is my hip and hers is here. So we are almost the opposite.
We are.
And yet we're probably a similar size in a way.
In a way, and we both want to have clothes that fit us and make us feel good. Because it's not sufficient when you have extreme examples like we are to just grade between a couple of sizes. All those proportions get thrown. Traditionally, commercial patterns are designed around a B cup because that is the size that mannequins come in. For someone like me, that's fine because I wear a C cup, and with that amount of ease that there is with a pattern, it's not like wearing a bra, you have some flexibility. But for most people, they have to do a full bust adjustment.
I've frequently done full bust adjustments and I've always found it a real pain, and I've always felt a bit indignant really because I don't feel as though I am so off the charts that I should be doing a full bust adjustment. And when I look at other people who are doing it, I feel the same. They just look normal, whatever normal is, you know.
It's about creating our own kind of normal.
Yes, what is a normal body?
Yeah, and feeling confident in ourselves. So a lot of people are coming into sewing now, but they don't have pattern making skills. It's really important that they shouldn't have to do a full bust adjustment or understand about the full set of proportions that are required when drafting trousers. If patterns can actually accommodate those different body types, then that home sewer is going to start off with a more confident base because they're going to be able to actually make something that fits and they're going to enjoy wearing.
Yes, that's exactly right. And I think the two tops that we've got on are classic examples. So Sarah is wearing the Pattern Union Cora, which are in a knit, and the pattern is also available in a woven. And there's a few things about the Cora that I love. It has bust darts. Often in a knit, you find that in a t-shirt you often need bust darts. You get these underarm wrinkles. So anything I want to be fitted, I'll go put my hand on a Lulu tee.
Which also has the incorporated bust darts, even though you can't see the actual dart, that cup shaping is built into the pattern as well.
And I think you can see, like I can see just looking at me, I have a clearly defined bust, unfortunately.
I think she's lucky.
And none of that sort of wrinkling that happens in a normal t-shirt. It fits perfectly. Also because it has cup sizes.
Yes, so the cup sizes are really important because when we have a larger bust, we're expanding through the front but not necessarily through the back. So if you want something that's going to fit well, then you don't necessarily have a large back on as well as having a large front. And these things are important with pattern making.
Yes. So some of the things that Sarah tries to design into her patterns is she's aware of trying to flatten out through here. She's aware of trying to fit through the hips and the thighs, and also making your backside look good, which is a really hard task for me.
Hard for all of us. I'm the same with such an extreme shape as well, having things fit through the thighs but also fit nicely through the bottom. So there you have it. 2 body types, the high triangle, low triangle, same pattern, fitting us both. Even a sewing pattern that addresses body shape can't fix or fit issues, particularly with trousers. A big factor with fitting is posture. Now often we think of posture as something to do with the shoulders. If our shoulders are hunched forward like this, we think, oh, I've got bad posture. And it's not about being good or bad with your posture, it's about your body type. Posture is related to the pelvis, and that's not something we think about. We normally think it's the spine, and of course the spine is involved, but it's the tilt of the pelvis that actually creates our posture. So with good posture we have what's called a neutral pelvis, but with someone like me I have an anterior tilted pelvis, and that means that my pelvis is rolling forward. So you can sort of tell when someone has an anterior tilt and they have this curvature in their back, but also their belly kind of pops out. And for a sway back, which we normally think of as having this curvature, in fact the pelvis tilts backwards and it's the hip bone that comes forward. When the hip bone comes forward, it also rounds the shoulders forward as well. This is a diagram of someone with regular posture. You can see from the balance line running through the body that the ear and the shoulder are in line, and the pelvis is sitting straight. For someone with an anterior tilt, the pelvis is tilting towards the back, causing the belly and the bottom to poke out and the shoulders to go towards the back. Someone with an anterior tilt can be accused of sticking their bust out when in fact it's just the nature of their posture. We can see from the balance line that the ear is now behind and the hip is in front of that balance line. This causes a curvature of the spine, meaning that the person with an anterior tilt appears shorter than someone with regular posture. For someone with a sway back, the pelvis is tilted forward, causing the hips to thrust out, the bottom to tuck under, and the shoulders to roll forward. When we look at the balance line, we can see that the ears are quite far behind it. The curvature of the spine is still pronounced, meaning that someone with a sway back is going to be shorter than someone with regular posture. Okay, so in the interest of education, I have put myself into a cat suit so I can demonstrate for you how you can actually have a look at your own posture. You could also do this in your underwear. This is something that I put under a wetsuit for when I go snorkeling. Not that that happens very often. So what you can do is get some self-adhesive dots and run them all down your side. So you can see I'm shedding dots. So I'll just pop a few more on. You should see my floor And you can take a couple more and put them exactly where your hip bone is. And you can also put one on your shoulder. Now, when you turn sideways, you'll be able to see what your alignment is doing. So you can see that my bottom is pushing out, my belly is pushing out, and I've got that slight curvature along the line there. So what you can do is take a photograph of that and actually draw a line over it to see, is your pelvis tilting that way or that way? Because if I had the sway back, it would be doing that, and immediately you can see how the angle of those lines changes. And if I try and do a neutral pelvis, which is extremely hard for me, you can see I can kind of get that looking a bit straighter. And you can see too, if you've got a shoulder dot, again, it's an extension of that line. So if you fancy doing that and putting up a picture at the end in the comments, I'll be happy to have a look at that and give you some feedback on your posture as well. The consequence of a tilted pelvis means that the actual crotch bowl shape will change, which affects the crotch curve. With regular posture, the waist is straight, and so the crotch curve is even, which is what regular patterns are designed for. If you have an anterior tilt, it means that your waistline is angled towards the front, resulting in a shorter front crotch curve and a longer back crotch curve. With a sway back, the reverse is true. The waist is angled towards the back, meaning that the front crotch curve will be longer than the back crotch curve, all of which affects the shape of the pattern and the resulting fitting issues. So if you're aware of these qualities in your body, you can then address them with fit. And that's what I want to talk to you about now, because I had some great testers in my sewing group for the Hannah culottes, and we really delved into these fit issues. So let's chat about some of them now. So let's talk about an anterior pelvic tilt. Because I have addressed body types in my pattern, to some degree this is going to provide the solution. So for me, I have the anterior tilt, but the trousers fit me fine. All I had to do was take them in a bit at the sides just to accommodate my waist. But for some people, that is more extreme. So in this first case, what you can see in the illustration is actually that because of that tilt, the fabric is collapsing at the front. And that's because although the actual pelvic bowl measurement is the same, it's tilted. So in fact, the front section is shorter than the back section than, say, with a neutral pelvis. So this is how I solved it. For the front, a line was drawn parallel to the waist. This was slashed and the centre front was lowered to close it 2 centimetres. This meant the front crotch had to be redrawn to re-straighten it, the waistline had to be redrawn, and the pleat was trued. Additional fabric was added to the side seam to prevent it pulling towards the front. Another issue that you may find with the anterior tilt is that when you're standing sideways, not only is the fabric collapsing at the front, but the back won't do up. So that's not a case of the waist not fitting, because if you actually look at the waist measurement, it's accurate. That means that you actually have to deal with that tilted pelvis and again the pelvic bowl measurement. For the back, a line was drawn parallel to the waist. This was slashed open and pivoting at the hip opened the centre back. The crotch curve needed to be redrawn and the darts trued. It can be easy to confuse a pelvic tilt with uneven weight distribution. You can have a selection of bodies that share the same height and weight, but their measurements are not the same. Trouser patterns are drafted to fall from the fullest part of the belly and bottom, and the side seams fall evenly down the length of the leg. A full belly will cause the waistline to tilt as it raises and angles the front waist. If the side seam appears to drag towards the front, it means the front leg needs more room. It can be hard to tailor trousers to fit at the natural waistline without elastic, but it can also be more comfortable if the waistline sits at the fullest part, which is the low waist. A full bottom has the opposite issue. The side seam will drag towards the back, meaning more volume is required to allow the side seam to hang straight. Strong thighs that extend past the belly cause the fabric to pull under the bottom. If the trousers have pleats, it can be better to shorten the pleats so it fits smooth at the waist but skims over the thighs. The other factor though could be that it's not even so much a tilted pelvis that we're dealing with, it's just that someone has a very full bottom. In that case, we need to look at where the pull lines are to sort of work out what's happening. With this example, you can see that actually with the full bottom, by opening out the back pattern piece and allowing that fullness to cover the bottom, it then actually releases the front can sit flat, and then the back will as well. And that's indicated as well by the direction of the side seam. When addressing the fit issues of a pelvic tilt, there actually can be a few factors involved, and you may need to look at a few different solutions to actually address it.
Okay, so this is where I'm at with my low triangle, size 20. So this is just a quick muslin made up in an old cotton sheet. So the first thing I have to say is that it's super exciting to make a pair of pants just in one size and not have to grade. This is the best result I've had as a straight, no grading ever. It's amazing. So things particular for me, so you can see I draw balance lines on when I'm doing a toil. So I'm looking not too bad at the front here. I've got a bit of a tummy, but it feels pretty good. But as soon as I get to here, I've got all sorts of stuff going on. So I have actually got a drag line pointing down there inside the pocket. The pockets are just hanging open, and what's happening, you can see my balance line there is pointing up. So this just isn't, it needs to be down there, and it doesn't want to go there, so I think I actually need some more room. I need to make some room back here. So they're riding up at the back, and I've got a bunch of excess fabric at the back. And you can also see, what else can I see? They do look like they are sitting a little bit low at the centre front. I feel like I want to lose some down here, put it up in here. Yeah, and it feels, you can see my side seams are really tilted forward.
So for example, if the pelvis is tipping forward and the bottom is thrust out, it could mean that you're going to have fabric collapsing through the front. If that's the case, you need to create a slash line across your pattern, and of course you need to make sure that you include the pocket pieces as well. Then you would cut across that slash line and then close it over the front, creating an angle. The back was sitting too high, causing the excess fabric to buckle and the side seam to swing towards the back. Whilst this does look like a pelvic tilt, the solution was surprising. In the end, we drew a line parallel to the waist, slashed it open, and pivoting at the side seam, dropped the centre back seam. This crutch seam had to be redrawn, and ease was added only at the hip point because the waist actually was fitting well. If you find that the fabric is collapsing at the front and you're getting bagginess at the back, it could be that you actually just need to shorten that pelvic bowl measurement. You'd be able to tell this by rolling the front, and if that pulls everything into place and then the hip line is sitting smoothly, then you know that you just need to take out an even amount the whole way around. In this fit video, we can see that whilst the fit isn't bad, it's not perfect, and that's because the trousers are too long in the pelvic bowl and also need tightening at the waist. The solution then is actually to take a chunk the whole way round out of that measurement to shorten that pelvic bowl measurement. For some people, they may think a style like this won't work for them because they actually have a more pronounced tummy and a bit more flat through the bottom. So some of these solutions will work and some won't. Sometimes there is just gaping at the front, and because of that roundness of the tummy where this sort of lower belly measurement is greater than the waist measurement, there's not much you can do there. You don't really want to shape that centre front seam in because that will actually create a more pronounced bulge over the belly. In that instance, what you want to do is just work with that full belly measurement, get that sitting nice and flat so it falls from the belly, and then simply put a bit of elastic through the waist. It's not a lot, but it just creates a bit of gathering to pull it in. It sits comfortably and they're still going to look great. When I'm teaching pattern making and sewing to my clients, I always say to them, you must toile. Even with all my years of experience with pattern making and sewing, if I make a new pattern, I always will toile it because there will be different fit issues for each shape. So the toiling process, or making a muslin, is fascinating to me. I'm really interested in the stories that they have to tell. So look for the little indicators. Is there wrinkling? Is there pulling? A big one is when you turn sideways and you look at the side seam. Is it pulling to the front? Is it pulling to the back? And if you're making trousers, it's actually a good idea just to make them knee length, because sometimes it's not just the indication of that side seam, but where you look at where it's cut off at the knee. Is it straight? Which way is the angle going? All of these things are indicators for you to actually make the corrections so that it will fit your body well. So don't be scared by the toiling process, and hopefully understanding posture and looking at these tips and tricks will really help you on your fitting process.
I think that worked quite well.
Yeah, I think that was a good one.